Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for a pretty challenging look at the heart of Hollywood.
We really are.
Specifically, we're looking at the cinema industry in 2025. And the material we've been unpacking, it offers a, brutal assessment.
It calls this a ruffled year for putting it mild.
It is. And we're diving into this analysis that argues the whole business model for cinema isn't just struggling anymore. It's approaching a total term decline.
And that's the key thing. It's a consensus across these sources. It's not one article. It's a synthesis of a lot of critical analysis looking at all the distress signals.
All at once.
Yeah, all at once. The economics, the consumer behavior, the technology, and they're all arriving at this unified and frankly terrifying conclusion if you're invested in that traditional theater model.
Okay, so let's unpack that with our core mission for the dive in mind. Telling a bug.
Right.
For years, right, whenever the cinema industry had a bad quarter, poor box office, whatever, they'd call it a bug.
A temporary problem, something you could fix.
Exactly. They'd blame a bad slate of movies or scheduling or, most recently, global health crisis. But the analysis we're holding suggests these problems are not temporary bugs anymore. They are now permanent, embedded features of a totally changed entertainment culture.
They're symptoms of an obsolete model.
And this whole transformation, it's been, violently accelerated by the one big catalyst.
Oh, yeah, the earth-shattering news.
Yeah.
The monumental announcement that Netflix officially won the bidding war to acquire Warner Brothers.
And their entire catalog of intellectual property. I mean, this isn't just a merger.
No, it's an epoch shift for the entire industry.
And that is the exact moment, according to these reports, that the industry went into a tailspin.
Of course, because Warner Brothers isn't just some content library.
No. It's DC Comics, it's a century of Hollywood history, it's this massive vault of established IP.
And now it belongs to a company whose entire business strategy is built around maximizing streaming subscription hours.
So the panic is justified.
Completely justified. And the analysis makes it pretty clear that this wasn't some accidental outcome. The big fear that's echoing across all the other studios, the reason for the tailspin is this firm belief that Netflix is going to use this acquisition to just systematically dismantle the theatrical model.
Cut out the middleman.
Exactly. By owning a catalog that huge, that diverse, they can speed up the transition of big budget movies almost entirely to streaming. The physical theater just gets cut out of the loop.
So let's start by looking at the specific symptoms then. What was going on in 2025, even before the Netflix deal, that signaled this shift from bug to feature?
Well, there were four really distinct and sort of reinforcing markers of decline. The material details them very precisely.
Okay.
First, and it's the most obvious one, was the sustained, unyielding decline in theater attendance.
People just weren't going.
Even for the big blockbusters.
Yeah.
The overall numbers were lagging way behind pre-2020 averages. People were, just finding other things to do or just waiting.
And compounding that, the second marker, ticket prices, they just kept climbing.
Relentlessly.
Yeah.
Which makes no economic sense, right? Attendance is down, but prices only go one way.
Especially for things like IMAX or 3D, it turns a casual night out into a luxury event.
It really does. And then the third marker was the deeply disappointing box office returns for movies that, historically should have been slam dunks.
Guaranteed blockbuster.
Right. The budgets were still massive. The marketing spend was astronomical, but the ROI, the return on investment, was just consistently falling short. The studios couldn't rely on the safety of their big franchises anymore.
And the fourth symptom, the one that really paves the way for the streaming takeover, was that relentless shrinking of the theater.
That gap, that crucial time between a movie debuting only in cinemas and then becoming available at home. It just kept getting shorter and shorter.
So when you put all four of those together,
you realize the consumer is facing a collapsing value prop. They're being asked to pay way more money for a product that's going to be available, often just a few weeks later, for a tiny fraction of the cost, and they can watch it in, superior comfort.
The system was basically training its own audience to wait for the home release.
It was.
And, okay, so if we look at the immediate reaction to the Netflix-WB merger, the panic level just shows how existential. The analysis points out this extreme, almost desperate reaction.
It's staggering, the desperation. The source mentions specific petitions, these high-profile efforts aimed directly at the White House, appealing to the sitting U.S. president, who they refer to with the, let's say, politically charged term, the dreaded orange man, to step in and block the deal on antitrust grounds.
And we have to pause on that irony for a second.
Oh, it's incredible.
Hollywood, an industry that is so often politically opposed to that administration, was essentially on its knee, begging for protection from an economic threat.
It says everything about the perceived threat level, doesn't it? the cognitive dissonance there. To seek federal intervention from a figure they so often publicly attack, it just highlights how dire they saw the crisis.
It wasn't just another corporate deal to them.
No, they saw it as an existential threat that needed the highest possible government action. The implication is that they felt the economic rules they'd played by for 100 years were being shattered, and only this huge external force could possibly save them.
But the analysis also kind of dismisses that, right? It says the White House's ability to really interfere in a merger of this size is futile.
Or at least too slow to matter.
Exactly.
The central finding here is that the problems run too deep for some political quick fix.
So the core thesis we have to keep coming back to is that the material just dismisses all the usual.
Yep.
This isn't a temporary slump. It's not a bad spell that a few good movies are going to fix. The analysis says this decline is irreversible.
It's the harsh truth. The argument is that this isn't random. It's the final stage of an evolutionary process that started decades ago.
With VHS?
With VHS, then DVDs, then big screen TVs, and now streaming. The underlying problems were always there. They were just masked by the spectacle, by that cinematic arms race.
And now those issues have become permanent, unavoidable features of the modern entertainment economy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know the industry is failing, but to really get why the average person, the mass market, is leaving the theater behind, we need to walk through the pain points.
Right.
The source material has this brilliant and very relatable mental exercise. It follows a typical American family man taking his wife and 2 kids to the movies. Let's walk through that experience because it shows exactly why people are opting out.
Yeah. This part is, it's brutal because it's so true. The journey starts with time, hassle, and cost, way before the movie even starts.
So picture this dad, he's trying to do the right thing, take the family out.
The outing begins with a logistical nightmare.
The first hurdle is just the commute. It's often, a 30-minute drive in heavy traffic just to get to the local suburban multiplex?
Which is probably stuck next to some huge congested shopping center. So that's an hour of driving already baked into your 3-hour night out. Stress levels are already up.
And then they get there, and the expense breakdown just smacks you in the face.
The analysis really hones in on this, because to make the trip feel worth it, the kids, of course, insist on seeing it in a special format.
IMAX, yeah.
And those tickets are easily running $20 or more. So for a family of 4, you're already at $80 just to walk in the door.
Before you even think about parking.
Which is rarely free. And this is where the source material gets really sharp. Then you have what it calls the concessions tax.
Right. And it's this idea that people feel they have to buy the ridiculously overpriced drink snack. It's not just for fun. It's a necessity.
The insight is that we've been conditioned to need constant consumption while we're passively watching something.
You can't just sit still for 2 hours.
No. The source says people can't sit through a 2-hour movie without shoveling a constant stream of food and drink down their throat. And the theater exploits that need ruthlessly.
So a large soda and popcorn can add another $30, $40 to the bill, easily.
So before this guy's even found his seat, the total for this one 3-hour piece of entertainment is over $100. He spent an hour commuting and buying things, and he's $100 lighter.
And now they're in the theater itself, and this is where the experience really starts to degrade.
The analysis, it does not pull any punches here. You find your seats, and they immediately smell a bit weird. But the specific detail the source fixates on is the suspiciously sticky patch around the crotch area that hasn't been cleaned.
Oh, that is designed to stick with you, isn't it?
It is. And it just encapsulates the lack of maintenance, the underlying discomfort that's now just a feature of that shared public space.
It symbolizes the lack of care. But the real enemy of the experience is the social, the noise, and the light pollution.
This is where the old social contract of the cinema has just totally collapsed. You settle in, you're hoping to be immersed.
And immediately there are teenagers
gossiping about every single detail of their lives throughout the entire movie, totally oblivious to the fact that other people have paid a lot of money for silence.
And then there's the phone light. The analysis points this out. People are distracted, they're scrolling.
Some are actively watching TikTok videos with the volume turned way up, directly competing with the multi-million-dollar sound mix of the actual movie you paid to see.
And then it escalates the example to the extreme but sadly relatable case.
The guy having a full-on argument with his girlfriend on speakerphone, treating the theater like it's his private living room.
What's so wild is that the whole financial model depends on people being quiet and focused.
Right.
But modern social behavior, driven by this need for constant connection, makes that impossible. You're paying a huge premium for an actively miserable, noisy, uncomfortable experience.
And that misery is prolonged by what the source calls the endless preamble.
You're $100 in and you still don't get to see the film yet.
Not yet. First, you have to endure 15 minutes of commercial.
Often for luxury cars you're never going to be able to afford, mandatory viewing that you've paid them for.
And after the ads, you get another 20 minutes of trailer. So before the actual movie even starts, this family has been sitting there, enduring the noise, the sticky seats, the marketing for almost 35 minutes.
All of this delay, all that sugary soda they bought, it just sets the stage for the next disaster.
The inevitable logistical disruption. The family man, he's finally sinking into the movie, and then he faces the interruption cycle.
And the analysis uses the perfect example.
The 5-year-old, thanks to that massive soda from the concessions tax, inevitably needs the bathroom now.
Of course.
So the poor dad has to stumble his way out, tripping over people's knees, probably spilling the rest of the sticky soda.
And actively pissing off a dozen other people who are now pulled right out of their own experience.
They miss the first 10 minutes of the film, and the whole experience is ruined by simple biology, a problem the theater model actively creates and then punishes you for.
So the post-mortem for this hypothetical family man, it's just damning.
3 hours later, he's tired, he's $100 poorer, he's still dealing with the smell of sweaty, unwashed bodies and the sound of food getting shoveled into face.
He gets home, collapses on the couch, and asks himself that one simple, fatal question.
What the F was the point in any of that?
And if we tie this back to the core, given the time, the hassle, the cost, comfort, and knowing the film will be on...
Is it any wonder the answer to that question is almost always...
It's an unsustainable value proposition. The analysis says the problem isn't the content. Hollywood still makes amazing things.
It's the delivery system.
Yeah.
The delivery system has become economically and logistically unviable.
Which brings us directly to the irresistible alternative.
Yeah.
For decades, the theater kept its appeal because of one thing: scale and spectacle.
A physical reality that home tech just couldn't compete with. If you wanted that huge image, that booming sound, you had to leave the house. That was the reason to put up with the $100 hassle.
But the home cinema revolution completely changed the game. It's made the theater model obsolete as a mass market.
The analysis highlights that the tech advance at home has been exponential, while the theater experience has only gotten marginally better, or in a lot of ways worse, because of the social part.
And our sources say that an investment of $1,000 or less today can buy you a pretty serious home cinema setup.
We're talking 65-inch 4K HDR screens, soundbars that deliver really impressive virtual surround sound, comfortable seating.
The barrier to entry for a spectacular viewing experience has just fallen through the floor.
The quality gap between a premium home setup and a standard multiplex screen. It's not some huge chasm anymore. It's marginal, especially when you weigh it against the financial and emotional cost we just walked.
So this creates the unavoidable trade-off. The consumer is trading the absolute maximum scale of a commercial theater for absolute comfort and convenience at home.
And the mass market, tired of the noise and the sticky patch, is overwhelmingly choosing comfort and...
Let's do a direct comparison then of how the home advantages just systematically solve every single one of those theater pain points.
Okay, let's do it. First, convenient. Your home setup is ready whenever you are. No 30-minute commute. You just press play.
No overpriced snacks. You can pause the movie to make your own cheap popcorn or grab a beer.
Right, and you're not forced to sit through 35 minutes of ads and trailers you didn't ask for.
And crucially, the environment
No shared space with strangers who can ruin it. No gossiping teenagers, no speakerphone arguments, and no suspicious sticky patch. It's clean, it's dark, personal.
And the killer application, the one that solves our $100 man's crisis.
The pause button. The ability to pause the movie whenever the 5-year-old needs the bathroom, or the pizza arrives, or your phone rings.
You never miss a single second of the story.
And if you look at the total financial cost, the low cost of a streaming subscription plus your own food versus that $100 family trip, I mean, the economic choice for the mass market is an open.
All the pain points of the theater are gone, and the experience is available instantly, on demand.
It's just an irresistible alternative.
So if the tech is there, and the convenience is irresistible, this brings us to the core economic argument. The material calls the movie theater an outdated form of entertainment, a holdover from the 20th century. The question is, why did it survive for so long? Why didn't it die with the rise of home video in the 90s?
It survived because of what the analysis calls the cinematic arms race.
Okay.
The whole system was propped up past its natural expiration date by one single philosophy: perpetual sensory escalation.
They had to make the experience so impossibly huge that it justified all the hassle.
Exactly. It meant studios pumping out movies with ever more gigantic budget, focusing obsessively on visual effects that only looked good on the biggest possible screen. And theaters had to invest in louder, more directional sound systems.
They were constantly pushing the technical limits of spectacle just to maintain that distinction.
If the movie was so overwhelming, so visually demanding that you absolutely could not replicate it at home, then the industry could survive. They were literally using spectacle to fight the inevitable improvement of the living room.
And the source material is very critical of this. It sees it as a desperate and ultimately doomed strategy.
They were just trying to outrun technological progress. Studios and theaters were locked in this escalation decades, pushing budgets and spectacle until, as the analysis says, they finally hit an evolutionary dead end.
And that dead end is the point where the cost of creating the $250 million.
It no longer generates a corresponding increase in the audience's willingness to pay the premium price and put up with the hassle. The ROI curve just flattened out and then started to decline.
But wait, I have to challenge the fatalism a little bit here. If this decline is really irreversible, what about the counterargument? You know, the idea that theaters just need to invest in premium, curated experience.
Like boutique cinemas, dine-in theaters, luxury seating.
Right. Isn't that the necessary evolution?
That's a crucial point, and the analysis addresses it directly. The authors say that those specialized boutique cinemas, they represent the future niche, but they will never again be the mass market delivery system. The problem today is the collapse of the 15-screen suburban multiplex model, the one that relies on high-volume, low-margin popcorn sales to survive.
Those places can't afford to become luxury boutiques.
Exactly. And the sheer number of them needed to support the old distribution model is now economically nonsensical.
So the dead end isn't just about the spectacle on screen. It's about the financial viability of just maintaining thousands of these underattended, uncomfortable multiplexes.
They can't escalate the spectacle enough or improve the comfort enough to overcome the convenience and low cost of the modern home setup for the average family.
The conclusion is firm, then.
The question was never if this delivery model would fail, but when the balance would tip for good. And according to this analysis we're reviewing, the answer is emphatically now.
So if we accept that reality, the focus shifts to the inevitable future of film delivery. And this is a critical distinction. This is not the end of Hollywood or the end of movies.
No, absolutely not. It's the unavoidable death of the old method of delivery and financing.
The demand for stories, for escapism, that's never going to go away.
Never. The mechanism for getting that story to the viewer is simply evolving. The analysis is clear. People are going to watch dramatically more movies in the comfort of their own home. That path is locked in.
Which means the distribution system has to adapt. The analysis predicts the theatrical window will keep shortening until it probably vanish altogether eventually.
The death of exclusivity as a core revenue driver.
So we should expect the future standard model to be a simultaneous...
onto streaming platforms and into whatever theatrical venues are left. For a studio, especially one earned by a massive tech company like Netflix, holding a movie back for months just to generate diminishing box office return, it becomes economically illogical.
Because the greater value for them is immediate subscriber acquisition and retention.
That's it. The cost of a $200 million movie is irrelevant if it brings in 1 million new subscribers at $15 a month and stops 2 million existing ones from churning.
The ROI is just calculated completely differently.
Precisely. Which leads to the next big question. What happens to the thousands of physical movie theaters?
They transform. The analysis suggests they won't vanish entirely, but they'll become a specialized, much less common form of entertainment.
And they use this really powerful historical analogy to explain it.
Right. They compare it to the old musical theaters of the 19th century.
Which were once the dominant form of mass-market entertainment, but they were eventually superseded by cinema and other media.
They didn't disappear, but they evolved. They became a dedicated cultural institution, a niche experience.
Right. Reserved for high culture, dedicated enthusiasts, or rare, spectacular events.
So theaters are moving from being the primary, universal way to see a film to being a rare, dedicated cultural experience.
Reserved only for dedicated film buffs who genuinely need to see that one art house film on a perfectly calibrated screen.
And for the occasional big event movies that people can't afford to miss.
Think of a massive cultural, like the definitive superhero finale or the latest James Cameron spectacle, the kind of film that can still just about justify that $100 family trip, maybe once a year.
And this whole transformation, it naturally makes the current system of measuring success obsolete.
Completely. Box office revenues will keep declining until they become obsolete metrics. They just won't be a reliable gauge of a film's profitability or its cultural impact.
We're moving entirely to a streaming-centric metric.
The material explains that a film's real success will now be determined by very specific measurements of subscriber engagement. Things like the number of hours watched, the completion rate for first-time viewers,
and the correlation to whether it kept subscribers from leaving or brought new ones.
And this brings us to a really critical and kind of worrying detail with huge implications. The analysis highlights that these streaming metrics, they are not independently verifiable.
This is a revolutionary part of the financial shift, isn't it?
It is. Since the studios now own the distribution platform, They control the data. They can use their subscription walls to hide massive and embarrassing flops.
So if a film costs $150 million and it bombs, the studio doesn't have to report a huge box office loss to its shareholders and the public anymore.
They can just spin it. They can frame the film as a successful piece of subscriber engagement or library filler. Sure. They can report abstract numbers like 90% of households started the film without ever giving the specific, verifiable data on whether anyone actually finished it or if it broke even.
Which raises a profound question about creative incentives, doesn't it?
It does.
If the true financial performance of a film can be hidden behind these proprietary metrics, does that reduce the pressure on studios to chase genuine quality and...
Will they focus less on making a great film and more on just making enough film to fill the subscription pipeline and stop people from unsubscribing?
It totally changes the economics and the creative driver. And the only companies that can really benefit from this opaque system, who can survive this kind of output, are the tech giants.
Which leads directly to the final and maybe the most defining prediction from the source material, the consolidation of power.
We should just expect to see more and more legacy studios getting bought by these streaming and tech giants, Netflix, Apple, Amazon.
This is the financial underpinning of the whole collapse. These tech companies make their real money elsewhere.
In hardware, in advertising, in cloud services.
Or just in managing massive global subscription volume. They operate with a totally different mandate than old Hollywood.
And the key thing for you, the listener, to realize is that these companies can afford to pump billions of dollars into film and TV and just see the content as a loss.
Even if the content itself never actually turns a profit, in the traditional sense, it does its job if it keeps the subscription active.
That distinction is everything. Legacy Hollywood had to live or die by the box office. A film had to earn more than it cost.
Modern Silicon Valley just needs the film to be engaging enough to stop a customer from hitting the cancel subscription button.
It changes the playing field permanently.
Legacy studios with their old financial models just cannot compete with the bottomless budgets from tech companies that see a failed $150 million blockbuster as a rounding error on a $1 trillion value.
So we've walked through the catastrophic symptoms, the sheer misery of the theatrical experience, the superior home alternative, the failed evolutionary dead end, and this inevitable future dictated by streaming metrics and tech giant dominance. Yeah. It's hard not to feel a little melancholy about that.
I agree. The analysis even acknowledges that, despite all the complaints we just detailed, the sticky seats, the noise, the hassle, the cost, there's still something kind of special about going into a movie theater.
That feeling of communal darkness, the sound washing over you, just losing yourself in a shared story for a couple of hours.
That specific cultural ritual is powerful, and its loss is tangible.
We've all felt it. We know the nostalgia. But the central takeaway for you, our listener, is the necessity of acceptance.
The analysis argues that clinging to the belief that this shift isn't happening or that it can somehow be magically reversed, it's just unrealistic. Nostalgia doesn't pay the bills.
Or justify the inconvenience.
And the cultural analogy they use to drive this point home is perfect because it highlights just how fast technological obsolescence happens.
It's like telling yourself that internet cafes or public payphones or video rental stores are going to make a comeback.
They won't. Because the moment convenience and superior technology made them irrelevant, the culture adapted quickly and permanently.
The theatrical movie theater is just the latest casuological progress, and the Hollywood system that relied on it as its financial backbone is dying right along.
The entire structure that governed film success, distribution, and consumption for over a century has become economically and logistically unviable for the mass market.
It's a collapse driven not by a lack of content, but by the irresistible draw of the pause button and the comfort of the couch.
So we leave you with this final provocative thought for your own exploration. If the mass market movie theaters are dying and the old Hollywood system that measured success by the box office is collapsing, what better thing will eventually come to replace it?
Will the freedom and the opacity of the streaming metric lead to more diverse, smaller, more creative films that never would have gotten a theatrical release in the...
Or will it simply result in an endless, expensive stream of disposable, algorithm-driven content designed purely to maximize hours watched and fill a subscription library, ultimately devaluing the very art form it's supposed to sustain?
And that, thank you for joining us, Dive.